paraplanning is one of those industries that's new enough that it's an exciting time to be part of the industry, but it's also established enough that people should be seeing it as a great career path. Whether they use it as a stepping stone to becoming an advisor, whether they want to stay in paraplanning, be a career paraplanner, whether they see it as a step from admin up, or if they want to see it as, I don't know, a step into compliance or management, whatever it is. It's one of those things, one of those occupations, I feel, that is very exciting because you never get 2 days that are the same.
Welcome to another episode of Talk FS. Talk FS is designed for professionals entering or in the financial services industry, such as financial advisors, mortgage advisors, paraplanners, and business owners. Talk FS aims to offer insights and guidance by interviewing key individuals from the industry, exploring their career paths, challenges, and successes. Today, I'm joined by Luke Sparks, an award-winning paraplanner who began his career in financial services and later became a financial advisor before realizing that client-facing advice wasn't the right fit for him. Luke discovered his passion for paraplanning and has since built a reputation for his technical expertise, professionalism, and dedication to elevating the paraplanning profession. He's well known for his work supporting advisors and clients, as well as his contributions to initiatives like the PFS Paraplanning Panel. Today, we'll be exploring the perception of paraplanning and how the profession can continue to gain recognition, and advice for aspiring paraplanners and the skills needed for success. Luke, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Nice to speak to you.
Fantastic. So I'm really interested on today's episode because it is a bold move that you made, going from paraplanning to advising and then back to paraplanning. It's something we don't see as often because the industry's kind of carved out this career map from admin, paraplanner, advisor, and there's no backwards, progression allowed kind of thing. But actually you wanted to focus on what was right for you. I'm looking forward to delving into that, really. So before we get into that side of things, you started out in the financial services world as an administrator, and then you moved into advising. What was it about paraplanning that was the right fit for you?
That's a very good question. I mean, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I obviously when I was administrating, I was working at a company that were very keen to put me through my level 4 exams. Because at that point, I think I was in my late 20s, and I thought to myself, as many people do when they come into the industry, financial advisors seems to be the way that, the trajectory for financial services professionals. You start off administrating, then move on to paraplanning, or move straight to advising. It's just once you're qualified. And I was very fortunate that I had very good mentors. The company that I was at in Surrey at that point, and they they put me through my exams, and I was very fortunate. I passed them all first time, which is, I wouldn't necessarily say a testament to me, but it's a testament to other people's patience with me to obviously do that. And then what attracted me to being an advisor was I really wanted to make a difference, to people's lives. And, like some of the advisors, because I was doing pension administration beforehand rather than IFA administration, slightly different there. With pension administration, obviously we could see people, small business owners buying commercial property and, where the pension would fit into their overall sort of financial planning. But with the advisors, we had an in-house IFA firm working at the firm that I was at. So they were upstairs and we were downstairs. And I remember shadowing a couple of the advisors one day, and just, it was the feeling that they could genuinely help people along with their lives. They could genuinely make things happen. People that might have wanted a mortgage, buy a house, the whole dream of home ownership, and the idea that they could go and speak to a financial advisor, mortgage advisor, and within a series of meetings, have their decision in principle, have their mortgage application completed. Appreciate it's a bit of a longer drawn out process than that, but I'm sure those of us who've bought a property will know that. But it's not just that. It's, some of the advisors, one example that I remember very vividly, one of the advisors was selling life insurance to one of their clients, probably no older than I was at the time. I would think the client was, and fit, healthy person, a couple, just got married, got themselves life cover sorted out, which is brilliant. They got on with them really well. And then over the bank holiday, I think he got hit by a car or something, There was some sort of really awful life-changing event, and I think he passed away. But without that life cover in place 6 months before, the widow wouldn't have had any idea. It would have been a lot more difficult to proceed with dealing with things, and having a life insurance lump sum there. I could actually genuinely quantify the value of the advice at that point. I could
Sure.
see that in action. So I thought, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. This is where I want to be. I want to be able to help people. I didn't really know too much about paraplanning at that point. My view of paraplanning then, when I was administrator, was more, they're the people that run the numbers in the background, sort of thing, if you know what I mean. And those of you that have heard of me or spoken to me before, my thoughts have changed drastically about paraplanners from that moment onwards. So I took the leap of faith, as you say. Went to becoming an advisor. Unfortunately, there wasn't room at that firm for me to do so. So I moved firms and went advising. I studied and passed my pension transfer exam, the DB pension exam. So I was CAS signed off as a DB pension specialist, and I was really enjoying that. Really enjoying being able to look at the technical aspect of the DB pensions, the GMPs, pensions with all the bells and whistles, protected tax-free cash, all that sort of stuff on there, and trying to find solutions and strategies to help people with that and see whether it was suitable or not. Now, when I was advising, that was, talking to clients was great. It was great fun. It was easy. The background paperwork, again, was fine. It wasn't so much of a problem. But the thing that sort of made me think, this isn't really my bag, if you like, or isn't really my calling, was more the sales targets, I think, because the way that I viewed financial planning and financial advice was that it was a holistic long-term strategy that's appropriate for that client, rather than, we're here to sell products to you. And I think this is no disrespect to any of the firms that I've ever worked at, because every firm has a different view on what they want to do, what they want to achieve, how they want their advisors to operate, whether they're tied, restricted, whatever, independent or whatnot. But I felt at that point, I think it was during the pandemic, so 2020, I felt at that point that there was an awful lot of product pushing from this specific firm, and the targets, obviously, if you didn't meet your target one month, it would be added onto the target for the next month. And you think, some people thrive on that, and do you know what, and that's a great driver if you're the kind of individual that wants to do that, and you thrive on that kind of level of pressure, because it is a thing. It does happen. For me, I didn't really, I kind of fell out of favor with that, because I kind of, ethically, it didn't really sit well in my mind. All I wanted to do was achieve the best outcome for the client, after all. So following that, studied some more. I was level 4 already, so I was just taking the next steps up to trying to become chartered. And then I thought, do you know what, rather than being an advisor elsewhere at this moment, I'm going to take a sideways step, moving to paraplanning, because we had a really, really good paraplanner that I was working with at the time at that firm, who I looked up to, because they were a fellow, chartered, very intellectual, very, very clever, switched on with products and services. And I quite liked the scientific approach to financial planning, which is kind of, you might think, well, that's a bit contradictory to when you're sitting there talking to clients, because obviously you don't want to bombard them with the technical jargon. You want to talk to them and on their level at the end of the day, and try and reassure them that what you're doing and what you're saying and what you're trying to sell is appropriate to them. The thing with paraplanning was, at that point, I had a very young son. I think he was about 3 or 4 months old. He was born during the pandemic, and that was anything but easy.
Oh, I can imagine.
And of course, advising isn't the sort of job that you can switch off after your 9 to 5, because you have to be available for when the clients are available, which is often evenings, weekends, and often the clients might want to meet elsewhere to their homes, and they might not be local. So, I was getting in at all sorts of hours of the night, having an hour and a half sleep, being woken up by the baby, my wife going to work and things. And I needed a bit of work-life balance as well, I think, from there. So I will say to anybody, being a financial advisor is a brilliant, brilliant role, and it's absolutely wonderful if you're the type of person that is able to dedicate the time to it, and obviously give it a really good go, and you're in tune with that. But as long as you're you understand what comes with it, then that's fine. After that, for work-life balance, I moved, as I say, sideways into paraplanning. And the thing that drew me to paraplanning was stable hours for obviously my son, but mainly it was the more sort of like the deep dive, the technical focus on the whole, on every aspect of financial planning rather than product pushing, so to speak. Not that I'm suggesting that advisors do that, because that's the last thing I mean. It was more sort of like trying to ensure that the best and the correct outcome for the client matched the numbers and also matched what the advisor is trying to do. So I did that. I started off just as a paraplanner, working with, I think it was about 15 to 20 advisors at that point. There was a team of 3 or 4 of us. And then obviously as time went on and the company grew, I then managed to pass my chartered exams, which is absolutely ideal. And I think at that time I was 32. I'm 36 now, so yeah, I was 32 then. And a few months later, I got my fellowship with the Personal Finance Society, which is fantastic. And I think being a younger person in the industry, and I hesitate to use the word younger because, I don't like being ageist or anything like that. But a lot of the demographic of advisors that I am currently working with are of a different demographic to me. They're a bit older. So I think having the chartered, having the fellowship, a lot of the advisors see that as, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. Like we actually, I felt like that they took me seriously, which isn't a dig at them. It's just what happens in the industry, isn't it? You get your chartered, and it's quite a high level of qualification, level 6. It's undergrad level, so it's a good achievement. And then, of course, then we worked with more and more advisors, and then I took on more responsibility. I was then a senior paraplanner, responsible for training others, building a team of paraplanners. And then moving a bit further forward by a year or so, I was fortunate enough to win the Paraplanner of the Year award with Professional Paraplanner in 2024, which was blew my mind. I mean, my wife and I went up to London for the award ceremony, didn't know anything about it. And obviously you have to, you enter, you do your case study, and you have an interview with people, and just having a chat like this sort of thing. Well, obviously a bit more bit more technical, I guess, with a few more questions, a few more like industry specifics. But I really enjoyed that, and I really I'm a big fan of Professional Paraplanner and PFS. All of the publications, they're all fantastic, and it's paraplanning is one of those industries that's new enough that that it's an exciting time to be part of the industry, but it's also established enough that people people should be seeing it as a great career path. Whether they use it as a stepping stone to becoming an advisor, whether they want to stay in paraplanning, be a career paraplanner, whether they see it as a step from admin up, or if they want to see it as, I don't know, a step into compliance or management, whatever it is. It's one of those things, one of those occupations, I feel, that is it's exciting, because you never get 2 days that are the same. You're always either you're always writing different reports, you're doing different research, you're looking at CPD, you're looking at, you can attend networking events if your employers are comfortable enough with you doing that. Yeah. So anyway, going back to the awards, obviously I did the bits and pieces and entered, and I had absolutely no idea. My wife and I were just enjoying a nice meal with everybody, just sitting there, had a small little glass of wine, and then they said, and the Paraplanner of the Year this year is Luke Sparks, and I just went, wow, and it's fantastic to get that. And I'll see if I can share the award here. It is actually here. Sorry, it's a bit of a mess. So it is still here. It is still here in the office. So takes pride of place at the back of the screen. No, I'm joking. No, it's right on this. It's on the desk. But no, that was a really proud moment, and it was at that moment that I thought, you know what, I feel like this is a really good industry to be in, a really good occupation to be in. But I felt that we could take it further. So as part of maybe my ethos, my mindset or something, I'm always striving for the extra, sort of go the extra mile, giving 110% effort sort of thing. Because the way that I look at it is that whatever you do in life, if you give 110% effort, you can be honest with yourself at the end of the day and say, I've given it a go. I've had a really good go at this. Whether it works, whether it pulls off for you or whether it doesn't, is irrelevant. You know, if you can honestly sit there at the end of the day and say, look, I've given my fullest effort on this. I've done the best I possibly can do. That's all anybody can ask of you. So fast forward another year to this year, and obviously I was nominated again for, well, not for Paraplanner of the Year this year with Professional Paraplanner. It was Team Leader of the Year with Professional Paraplanner, and I deferred success on the actual award, but I was highly commended this year for that. So it did take home a certificate, which is lovely. It's up on the wall. I wouldn't necessarily go there, but I feel that anybody that says there's a potential setback in any industry, whether you defer success or fail an exam, whether you beat into an award by somebody who's clearly better, whether whether there's whichever setback, I think to reframe that in your mindset as deferring success, or giving it a different label is better, because you then don't think I'm a failure. You think, actually, perhaps the time wasn't right this time. If I keep working hard, the time will come, and that's it. So, and then as a result of the awards and things, last year I was invited to join the PFS Paraplanning Panel, which obviously that we do such, the people on the panel are all super gifted, super fantastic paraplanners, a really, really lovely bunch of people, some of the nicest people I've met. And, we're trying to push the boundaries of paraplanning, try and explore different avenues which we can go down. And I feel like they, it's a really, really good place to be, because, it's kind of like a meeting of the minds, like a collaborative sort of thing, if you like, where we've got lots of different ideas, lots of different backgrounds, both in-house and outsourced paraplanners, business owners and employees coming together into a panel. And we're looking at everything in the industry, everything that paraplanners get involved with. And, we're trying to change things for the best, education in schools, trying to lobby government, this, that, and the other. But I did see the other day that I think the government are looking to bring financial planning into schools slightly.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, perhaps might be budgeting for that. But again, that's a really big thing, because I don't know about you, Ryan, but when I was at school, there was no,
Oh,
you had your PSE lessons or PSHE lessons, which were great. And they taught you about, to a certain extent, about life, but there wasn't anything saying, right, okay, here's your first paycheck. What are you going to do with your money? And then things like that, budgeting and, bills, what inflation is, that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. And, I'm very passionate about paraplanners and bringing anybody else into the industry, because I've passed 17 exams, CII exams, to get to the point I am a fellow of the PFS. And yes, that wouldn't have been possible without the people that believed in me to get there, but also I've done it. I've put all the hard work in and sacrificed the time to be able to do that. And I think that, not wishing to sound overly egotistical there with that comment, it was more, I feel that if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I think that, in this day and age, paraplanning is a really, really good occupation, because you've got a nice mix of technical ability plus a bit of human kind of life experience angle. When you come to write the reports, you put your soft facts in and all that sort of thing. So yeah, that's it really.
fantastic. Well, that's an amazing, cover of your experience, and there's a whole variety of different avenues I can sort of take there. just rewinding
Of course.
to sort of the point where you were an advisor, reconsidering, that move to become a paraplanner, and where you didn't like the sales targets that are commonly associated with advice roles. Was there at any point where you questioned, is this the industry for me? Because I wouldn't be surprised if that question did run through your mind, even if it, flashed quickly and gone in a minute. But did you ever wonder?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there was a period of about a week or two where I thought, surely there's more to life than this, with the sales targets and the like. But I think for me, the reality, I mean, obviously in theory, it would have had to have been a really, really strong opinion of mine to be able to kind of act on that and make the
Sure.
move. However, at the time, my son was a month or two old. you know, I had a mortgage. I still have a mortgage. You know, I still have a wife. You know, it's you know, and as the breadwinner, there's so much more to think about than that. And as much as I would have loved to have retrained as something else, probably for that split second decision, it was more a case of, you know, I need to sit down and really think about this because there's so many other factors in play here. I think had my home life been slightly different, I might have done. I might have made a change to do that. However, I think that, to be honest with you, you've got, ultimately for me, this is just me and my ethos. I've always felt I've got to do what's right for my family, me and my family, and at that time, keeping a roof over their head, keeping baby food going, and obviously, you know, food for my wife and I was, you know, was far more important. So my work ethic at that point was very much, or my entire mindset, my entire ethos was, okay, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, are there any other roles within the same industry? Because if I were to retrain as, I don't know, a developer or something IT focused, or, you know, any other kind of occupation, the likelihood of me taking a huge hit in salary from there to the next occupation might, you know, in order to achieve the same salary as I was on, might have taken a bit longer.
Hmm.
And I think that I obviously didn't want to, you know, I wanted to make sure that my wife and my son, i.e. my world, were looked after at that point. Um, so yes, you're right. Yeah, no, that thought had crossed my mind at that point. But once I'd actually actively spoken to the paraplanners and actively got involved with things like next gen, well, Plan X now, and or sort of, you know, started looking around on LinkedIn and contacting a few paraplanners to see what they actually did, and speaking to people in the industry that knew what they were doing with that sort of thing, my mind was quite quickly made up that maybe staying in the industry might have been better. And also, I'd spent quite a long time, 18 months or so, getting through the level 4 exams. You know, I didn't really want them to go to waste, even though it probably wouldn't have been a waste because I could have come back to that in the future should I wanted to. And to be honest, it was the pandemic. So what else was there to do other than study? You know, we weren't
Yeah,
allowed out.
definitely. Well, I commend you for going through that.
Mm,
The reason why I ask is because I've seen firsthand many people leave the industry because the role they were in wasn't right. And as a team here, you know, in what we do in recruitment, we're speaking to people all the time when they're, you know, often unhappy in their role. And we do get the odd person who sort of says, I'm leaving the industry. And I always encourage myself and my team to sort of go back to that person and say, is it the industry you dislike, or is it your job and your situation?
mm,
Same if you ask any secondary school kid, what's your favorite lesson at school? And they'll straight away jump to a lesson that's their favorite. Because I've done
yeah,
some career
playtime.
stuff in schools. And then I ask them, is it the teacher or is it the subject? And
Mm,
sometimes it's the teacher, which is why it's their favorite subject. And it's the same, isn't it? You know, it might be the situation you're in which led you to not like what you're doing, and you think that's everything's exactly the same. So it's so important that you reached out to people, sought alternative opinions, and actually found a bit more of your calling, which utilized your qualifications that you'd studied, utilized knowledge, you know, your desire to help people, all in a capacity that a paraplanner does, but they just don't get as much of the credit often for it. But it's such a powerful piece in the puzzle with the client journey. So, you know,
yeah.
good on you for going through that. I imagine, you know, you may have had your doubts at times with it. So yeah, well done. I want to go on to then the other part of the conversation where you're award winning, you're now involved in the panel, and you mentioned earlier there about trying to, you know, bring the profession further forwards. What sort of the things you're seeing on the horizon for the role of a paraplanner?
Okay, that's a very good question. Obviously, at the moment, I think we're seeing an awful lot of paraplanners and IFA firms across the industry using a lot of AI. So with that, we're not talking about, well, I mean, it's being used in a variety of different ways at the moment. My firm are selectively using AI, i.e. Microsoft Copilot.
Mhm.
But I think it's more. I've seen some really good AI providers. I can't remember their names offhand, but as part of the process whereby the paraplanner might want to be simplifying, like if you're doing a pension consolidation report or something, and you've got all the information for, like, say, 3 different pensions, and you want to summarize it, running all that data through an AI tool to produce one table or something with all the key points. I've seen that. I think AI is a really good way to go with that. And there is a big push in that in the industry at the moment, or that I've seen. See the PFS looking at obviously trying to, the paraplanning panel. We've got a guide to getting involved with paraplanning, which should be out by the end of the year, if not early part of next year. We've got the suitability report writing guide, and I heard a talk from one of the people at the FCA last week. The name escapes me, and I'm really sorry because I was there. But that they were focused, because I think the FCA are going to be focusing in on suitability reports next year.
Right.
And I know that a lot of financial advisors, myself included, when I was at that point, they do such a great job of talking to the clients and then just say, right, and here's your report, sign here, excellent, thanks. Or you leave the reports with the clients, as you would do. And because of the amount of regulation that we've got within the industry, the report, a one-page report, might end up being like that, a thick dossier. And with the greatest will in the world, we all know that a client's not going to sit there and read 100 pages, unless there's going to be something that's unless they're the sort of people to do that, because a lot of advisors build up that a trusted advisor status with their clients, so they don't necessarily need to talk them through every page. I'm not suggesting that they do, because that's entirely up to them. But it's interesting to see that the FCA are looking more towards suitability reports for next year, and seeing how we can kind of. So as part of the PFS Paraplanning Panel, we're going to try to see if we can look at that suitability report writing guide that we only put together a year or so ago, to try to see if we can streamline it, see if we can make improvements to it. Obviously, as I said before, there's quite a good big drive for education. I know one of the members of the paraplanning panel, as my colleague Sophie Brown. I know she does a lot of talks at Bournemouth University. For university students, undergrads, that obviously want, that might not necessarily know what a paraplanner is, and to try and educate them about that role in the industry, as well as any other roles, because I think all these things, like getting paraplanning involved with the National Career Service, on that list as an occupation on there, which I'm not sure if it has been or not. I think it might have been added to that. The sorts of things that the paraplanning panel are trying to push for, because, and also I think really, well, okay, externally, that's what we're trying to push for, because obviously we want fresh blood into the industry, and it is a fantastic role to be a part of. But I think also within the industry, I think sometimes, and I'm not mentioning names, because it's not, that's not nice, but I think there certainly has been in the past, perceived hierarchy: advisor, paraplanner, and then administrator. But I think with Consumer Duty, with all of the FCA thematic review on retirement income advice, with all these various decisions coming down from the FCA and the consultation papers and the like, the compliance departments for all these firms are going to be quite important, but the people that are actually going to translate what compliance say into the actual reports and the advice will be the paraplanners, most likely. So I think it's changing slightly. The perception of that hierarchy is changing, which is good, and I think that it would be good for advisors, or it would be good for new people in the industry to witness that. So you can see, because for me, an administrator, a paraplanner, and an advisor are all equally as important in the advice journey, because if the advice is good, the advisor is going to be obviously worth their salt. Obviously, the technical aspect's got to be good from the paraplanner's perspective, and then the actual processing has got to be good. Otherwise, the business isn't going to be implemented. So I think the way to a bit of reframing, I think, from the past, but isn't that evolution? I don't know.
Yeah, totally agree. And it is interesting, I saw that Royal London rolled out Copilot across all of their employees. And obviously that you think of the size business Royal London is. So, that's different ways. And I totally agree with you about that reframing of the hierarchy, and every piece is needed. I don't think any of those roles are going to be replaced by AI. I think they're going to be empowered by AI, but they're not going to be replaced. And I think, again, it goes back to that message I said earlier, really, doesn't it? You know, if you don't feel you're being valued for the role you're offering, regardless of where you're at within, you know, the client journey in terms of what you do, maybe you need to question, are you in the right place? Because you've seen that firsthand yourself, haven't you? That, you know,
Yeah.
you were maybe you were just in the wrong environment. It wasn't the wrong environment full stop. It was just the wrong environment for yourself. And when you've moved, you've then flourished even more. And I think, you know, if people aren't satisfied, then look up, look what's around you, and then maybe make a change, because who knows, you may then go on to, you know, much bigger and better things. And so I think that's very powerful.
No, Ryan, I completely agree. I think it's not necessary. If anybody within the industry is thinking this is not the right industry for me, you're absolutely right. It might just be circumstantial. Obviously, it might actually be that it is the wrong industry, which is fine, you know, and that's absolutely fine. But you're absolutely right in that, you know, and it is very difficult when you're in that mindset, especially if you've been under it for a while in your role that you're in, and you don't feel like you can see the right way out or whatever, see the light through the tunnel, or whichever analogy you want to use. But it is always good to be mindful that there are a wide variety of different roles within financial planning. If you feel that, you know, advice isn't the right thing, you know, you could go into pension consulting, you could go into business development manager at a provider. There's lots of different avenues. And I think that's the beauty of our industry, in that, in fact, I'm not going to, I probably won't tell you to do your job, because that's how you know how to do it. But for me, that's the beauty of the industry. There's lots of different avenues that you can go down. So, and there's also, obviously, you've got a lot, you know, there's a lot of good skill crossover as well between what we do and what other customer service roles there are around. But yeah, I agree. I think at that point, when I was kind of not being able to see the wood through the trees, sort of thing, um, I was, it's quite easy to go, do you know what? I'm done. I don't need to do this anymore. But actually, if you're able to take a step back and sort of like try and, you know, I had a pen and an A3 bit of paper, and I wrote down, what do I want to do in the middle circle, and it's kind of like a brainstorm, thought shower, mind map, sort of loads of different ideas and different roles and different things I could do. I didn't anticipate to write everything down about financial services, but the more roles that I wrote, they were all financial services roles. And the one that I kept coming back to more than anything was paraplanning. So I thought, well, you know, this is obviously telling me something psychologically, that maybe it's not the industry that's the issue here. Maybe it's just the circumstance. So I agree with you.
Mm. And you mentioned there about the crossover in skills. How do you feel where you had that period as an advisor? How's that shaped your effectiveness or the way you approach your role as a paraplanner then?
Well, okay, so it's given me a great deal of experience in delivering that message to the client at the end of the day, and it's kind of, when you're sitting with a client and you're advising, and you can look at the whites of their eyes, you listen to what they're saying, you listen to what's important to them, you're making your notes as you can do in your fact find and whatever, but it's more looking at the soft facts side of things. When I come to write a report now, as a power planner, you can do all the technical stuff is largely standardized. So you can do all the, you know, there is a standard, you know, within our firm, we've got a process for research, we've got a process for report writing, we've got a process for this, which is great. It's fantastic. But it's more the personalizing that report, and trying to look at the advice and the research from the client's perspective rather than our own. And I think having the experience of listening to clients, sitting with them, having tea and biscuits with them, understanding what they actually want out of their financial advisor, has kind of made, I've taken all of that kind of experience and that kind of skill set, the listening skill set, so that when I do the research and the report now, it's kind of like, because we get given like a pro forma, a summary of what the advisor wants to put into the report and the research and the like. And on there, where there's a section about soft facts and the like, when I'm looking at that and the situation, I'm always thinking, okay, well, if I was sat with a client, or if I were the client, what else might there be? You know, might there be something, you know, kind of asking the unanswered question, maybe, to a certain extent. And The other thing is to not be afraid of challenging the advisor's advice. I don't mean going back to them saying, you're wrong, you don't know what you're talking about, because that's a classic way to cause an argument. What I would, the experience that I have with the advisors that I work with, in fact, any advisor I've ever worked with in my entire financial services career, if you ask an advisor why they're doing something, they won't turn around and snap your head off and say, "Wow, just get on with it." I'm the advisor, you're the paraplanner, blah, blah. They actually genuinely, they buy into it, that they understand that I'm asking because I want to try and get the best outcome for the client. It's not for the end client, this is. So it's not that I'm questioning their advice. And with a couple of newer advisors that have joined our firm recently, there have been instances with other paraplanners where the paraplanner has pushed back and said, I know you want to go with, I don't know, argument's sake, Royal London for this pension, but perhaps Scottish Widows may be more cost effective. Is there any reason why you want to do this? And I've had to step in and say to the advisor, look, we're not questioning your advice. We're not questioning your integrity, because we know that you signed off on cash status. You got your exams. That's fine. That's great. All we want to know is whether this specific outcome is the best fit for this client. It's not, it's got nothing to do with your professional integrity. Just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, because ultimately, if the paraplanner and the advisor are on the same page, the reports are going to look great, the research is going to go well, the whole journey is going to be smooth, and then obviously the administrator's brilliant, processing of the business, it's going to be ideal. So I think, so circling back to the question, I think, actually listening to clients and reading because no client ever wants to fill out all of the compliance documents, if you know what I mean. Half the clients that I used to advise didn't necessarily understand everything that we had to do and why. Because obviously there's a lot of regulation, and it was my job to explain that to them and educate them and the like. So it's important as well for paraplanning, because I know that there's we also have a kind of like a compliance edge as well. We've got to make sure that the reports and the client file is compliant in case it's ever picked up as a complaint or whatnot. Yeah, so obviously it's knowing that some advice, and also it's important to know that some advisors work differently to other advisors.
Yeah.
So obviously, even in the same firm, we've got standard fact find, we've got standard attitude to risk questionnaire, whatever it might be, standard client documents. But everybody does things slightly differently, and I think it's important to to understand that that is the case, and everybody does things slightly differently, because we're not all the same ultimately at the end of the day. So sorry, going back to the question, or the answer to your question, I think being able to talk to people and being able to freely challenge the advice in a positive light is definitely something that I've picked up. Looking at things through the client's perspective has really helped, because if an advisor has already said to a client something along the lines of, look, I've got these two pensions, I want to move them to another provider, for example, the client, if the advisor's already told them that that's going to happen, if we don't do that, then obviously we need to try and manage that. And from the client's expectations, they're going to think, oh, well, the advisor is going to come back to me with a pension report or whatever it might be. So it's got to be the best thing ever, and it's got to relate to their objectives as best as possible. So it's just about communication, really, I'd say.
Fantastic. So do you think there's merit in paraplanners having good client-facing opportunities throughout their role to give them that element of seeing, that situation where you have to see the client, whites of their eyes and see the impact of what you're saying and the questions you're asking? Is there merit in the client-facing bit from time to time?
I absolutely think so. Yeah, I do think so. I think that if any paraplanner is able to do that, if they're working at a firm where they're able to do that, I would strongly encourage them to do so, because obviously you might be taken into the meeting and introduced as the calculator, the numbers guy, whatever it might be, the numbers person, like that sort of thing, as I have been introduced before. For some client meetings. It's like, thanks. Yeah, that's me. Yeah. Lukey calculator. But no, it is very important, because then they can, when you're in the meeting, there are things in there as well that will come up from the advisor client discussion that the advisor might not have captured in the fact find. They might not have captured some of the soft facts. They might not have captured the fact it's a daughter's birthday, or I don't know, dog's birthday, whatever it might be. But all these little perceived little things that are personal to the client, that if they make their way into the report, will make the report so much more meaningful to them. And it's something that they can look back on if they ever have cause to complain, because I don't know, they've been sold something silly or whatever it might be. If there's any issue, they can look back through the report and go, my advisor understood me. They understood everything that I'd said. They feel listened to, and then there's less chance of any issues arising later on down the line. And I think there's a lot of merit in any paraplanner getting involved with that, because, and also it gives you something, a bit more variety in the day, rather than sitting behind your desk on your laptop, typing away, doing the numbers, doing the emails and reports and things. If you're actually sitting in there and watching the advisor do their job, you've got a different perspective. You will then have a different perspective when you come to write another report, because you will have had the experience of what the advisor's going through, all the prep work that they do before they go into the meeting, what the client really wants to know, what they want to get out of the meeting as well. I think, so I would go so far as to say it's pretty important, that if any paraplanner has got the opportunity to do that, then they should take that with both hands.
And do you see that's where the sort of shift, where you mentioned about that hierarchy, it becoming much more flat, that everyone's needed, a paraplanner becoming much more regularly present in review meetings than historically?
Perhaps, yeah. I think that, if the opportunity's there and the advisors are willing to do that, then yes. I also very much appreciate that some clients with certain advisors only like dealing with that advisor because it might be, for example, that advisor has had advised husband and wife, husband passed away, wife only has trust with that one person, so they might not feel comfortable somebody else coming into the meeting. Perfectly understand that. That's part of the industry, isn't it? That's part of the advice. So, in those cases, you could argue that meeting recording, you could use a dictaphone for that. But again, some clients are, might not necessarily want their meetings to be recorded. I think obviously you've got the coverage if it was on Teams, for example, and you recorded a Teams meeting, the advisor's technically covered with what they've said during that meeting. The client might want a copy of that, which is fine. But I think I don't think you can just you can do that as a blanket, because every client's different, I mean, it's like when we phone up our utilities companies, calls are recorded for training and monitoring purposes. We don't get given a choice. It's, I don't necessarily want my phone calls to be recorded, but if it's something that I need, that it needs to be because I'm going to get something out of it, then yeah, of course, like an experience or something. So again, that's down to each individual advisor firm, but yeah, I do think it's very important, if possible, that paraplanners should be involved with those.
Yeah, I think it's a really, pragmatic approach, the way you're coming across with, trying to advance the industry, but also do it in that it's not a one size fits all approach as well, because that leads to bad outcomes if you're trying to, force things down, people, whether it's a process or whether it's, such as, paraplanners have to join every client meeting. Well, that's not always the right thing. Before we wrap up, one final question. I know you're very, proud of the work you're doing to push on the profession of paraplanners, which is fantastic. And, I commend you for that. What would be a sort of last piece of advice you'd have for someone who's considering paraplanning as a potential role or profession for themselves?
Okay, so back yourself. That's what I would say. Back yourself. If you think paraplanning is the job for you, I would urge you to contact as many people, myself included, on LinkedIn as much as possible. I'm more than happy to help any paraplanner within the industry, or any paraplanner on the PFS Paraplanning Panel. Will be more than happy to help, more than happy to speak to you about getting into the industry and give you kind of tips and hints on where you can go, what you can do, what the role's like, that sort of thing. I met a very interesting chap at the PFS National Conference last week who was just contacting lots of different IFA firms because he's an undergrad at university and he wants to get into the industry. I think that's a very proactive approach. So yeah, be proactive. If there's an awful lot of potential imposter syndrome within paraplanning, where paraplanners think, oh, I don't know, I should be doing this, I'm not quite sure about this, back yourself, because 9 times out of 10, your instincts are correct. Okay. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, because we're all human. Okay. If you make a mistake with the research and you know that it's not quite, you haven't yet done it, or it might be your first time, always ask for it to be checked, because a lot of people would prefer it to be correct first time, or, be correct before it goes to the advisor for their approval or whatever it might be. And also it reduces complaints. And yeah, I would urge you to just reach out and obviously, do exams if you can do exams, if that's what you want to do. Speak to as many people within the industry, network as best as you can, and then join the industry, be a paraplanner, come and work with me. Jobs are good.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's a perfect place to end it. Really relevant if you're looking at paraplanning or anything really. Back yourself. You're a first-hand example of that, aren't you? With backing yourself, and had some amazing achievements already, and long may that continue for you. So thank you very much for coming on today, Luke. It's been a pleasure talking to you. For those listening,
Right.
I do hope you've enjoyed this episode. As Luke's already kindly offered, he's happy for people to reach out to him. So we'll make sure his contact details and LinkedIn profile is probably the best way, is in the description box below. And I do hope you've enjoyed it. And if so, please do subscribe, because we'll look to deliver more similar fantastic conversations like today.